Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the personal and emotional elements of money and the impact that money has on every area of your life. I'm Austin Black, a personal finance coach that helps couples overcome their fear and frustration of financial management so they can take complete control of their money. What started as a desire to learn the fundamentals of money management has turned into a passion for helping couples work together to achieve financial success and strengthen their relationship with each other. Whether you're looking for the best strategies to manage your money as a couple, or you're tired of struggling to gain traction and want to overcome the fear and frustration associated with finances, I'm here to help, and this show is for you. Ready to learn more? Then let's talk about the heart of money. Hey folks, if you haven't registered for the Money Secrets for Marriage Summit, pause this podcast and do it right now at freedommoneycoach.com/summit. I'm bringing 10 of the nation's experts in marriage and money management together for 2 days to teach strategies and share stories about how they have helped couples just like you gain complete control of their money and strengthen their marriage. It's all happening live and online September 25th and 26th, and you can register for free at freedommoneycoach.com/summit. That's freedommoneycoach.com/summit. Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money. I'm your host, Austin Black. This is episode 107, and I am excited to have our first guest for season 3 this year. This is going to be a lot of fun. I got Derrick Kinney, who is a certified financial educator and author of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today national bestseller, Good Money Revolution. He also is a financial expert and the CEO of the Good Money Framework. He has had 20 years of experience as a financial advisor, where he has helped people align their financial goals with their personal values, which is so important. And because I love other podcast hosts, I got to plug that he's also the host of the Good Money podcast, which delivers actionable insights and inspiring conversations with thought leaders, business minds, and philanthropists, focusing on how people can use their money to create a positive impact. Derrick, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you. Welcome to the Heart of Money.
Austin, thanks for having me. I am looking forward to this conversation. I really appreciate it.
So you've got a very small background from Missouri, so we kind of have that in common, but you spent most of your life down in Texas. So tell folks a little bit of background about yourself, what you do, and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah. So I as we broadcast this, I'm here in Arlington, Texas, right in between Dallas and Fort Worth. Been here since the 6th grade, so this is home, really. But we moved around 6 times before the 6th grade. And so I never really had a base of friends. And so when I moved here, it was like starting all over again. And the problem I had was I had a really big nose, as you can see. And the kids here in Texas, well, you like to say everything is bigger in Texas. Well, my nose fit in. But I got teased about it mercilessly. And it actually led to some dark times for me. So went through elementary school, junior high. But I had this moment when I was a junior in high school. I had this crazy idea. I was a nobody with the heart of a somebody. And I looked around my high school and I saw all these groups of people that would hang out together, but nobody actually hung out with each other. There might be the band crowd or the rock and roll crowd or the country western crowd or the honor society crowd or the guys that smoked outside crowd, but nobody ever connected with each other. And so I decided to run for student body president. And the crazy idea was I decided to get a picture taken of me and the leaders of all these groups, us shaking hands, and I would get a quote from them. For example, the rock and roll guy's name was Rollin Curley, and Rollin said, "Hey, let's rock the vote with Derrick," something like that, kind of cute. And we posted these posters where these people hung out, and the craziest thing happened. I won the election. Out of 5 people, when the microphone crackle came on at the end of the day, they said, "And the winner is Derrick Kinney." And Austin, as it just happened yesterday, it makes me feel today, it wasn't me that won that day, it was all of us. It was everybody who was a nobody but had the heart of a somebody. And that election taught me a valuable business lesson. And that was, when you help other people feel important and heard and seen, you can grow a huge business. And it was those principles that helped me build one of the nation's top financial planning firms in the country. Sold it a couple years ago, but you didn't have to be the smartest or the most educated or the best looking, thank goodness. You just had to care about people and make sure they knew how much you cared about them. That was the key to business success.
Yeah. I would say that that is one of the eternal keys. I mean, you can never be successful unless you help someone, unless you care about them, and unless they know that you're looking out for their best interest. I think that's the only way to really be successful in business these days, or at all.
Completely agree.
So tell me about this whole concept of the good money framework. Where did this base from? What's the concept behind it, and what does it teach people?
Well, I've actually renamed it since then. I now call it the Millionaire Money Map. But what I did is I built a financial planning business for 25 years. And what led me into it was I loved working with money. I loved investing money, making money, saving money, all those pieces, even giving money. And I realized a lot of people didn't have a plan for their money. They really wanted to leave the middle class. They felt stuck. They had this problem. They were working hard. They felt like they were falling further behind, and there was no roadmap for them to get ahead. And so as I would work with all these people for 25 years, I developed kind of a system and a structure, really a roadmap to take them from middle class to millionaire. And it worked like every time. Now, some people, it took them longer, and some it took them kind of down a windy road. But people liked having sort of a GPS for their finances.
Yep.
And once we nailed that down, it was very, very successful. So when I decided to sell my business, I loved my clients and my team, but I felt like there was a burden I was carrying, and that is I didn't want to have the financial secrets I'd created locked up in a vault that only a few people had access to. I wanted to bust that vault wide open and say, America, it's available for all of you, because so many people feel stuck. They feel trapped. They feel like they're better than what their paycheck says, but they don't know what to do. And I'm out to change that.
I feel like that is the sentiment that every good financial educator and coach and teacher has. And the unfortunate reality is there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much that people are taught that isn't true, that keeps them from winning, that keeps them in this this mindset of, we can never get ahead. That what you and I teach, and what's like you kind of communicate in your book, is common sense money management that people weren't commonly given when they were growing up. And that's why we get kind of paid to do what we do today, is because common sense isn't very common anymore. But the fundamentals of money management, they need to be broadcast and need to be shared, because unfortunately there's some very loud voices out there that tell us the opposite. They're out there to help us not achieve success. What have you seen? What's the impact that you've seen from sharing that news and those stories, and helping people learn that it is possible to become a millionaire these days?
Well, one thing that's important to know is understand what is people's past experience with money. Let me tell you a crazy story. So I was in the office on a Saturday morning catching up on some things, and I saw my voicemail light blinking. And a voice inside Derrick said, Derrick, you need to listen to that message. And so I knew it might get me off track, but I pressed play, and there was a frantic woman's voice on the other end of the phone. I recognized it immediately. And she said, Derrick, you've got to call me back. I know it's Saturday, but I just got a notice in the mail. They're about to send me to jail.
Oh,
well,
my.
Austin, have you ever got a letter like that from anybody?
No, thankfully
Or a
not.
call like that? And so I knew this wouldn't age well over the weekend. So I had to call her right back, okay? And I said, so-and-so, I got your voicemail. Tell me what's going on. She said, Derrick, I don't know what to do. I got this letter in the mail. It says they're going to send me to jail. And I said, well, first of all, what does the letter say? And what she described was that she had written a check and hadn't moved money from her savings to checking to cover it, and she bounced a check. It was a non-sufficient funds letter. And I said, wait a minute. It sounds like you just bounced a check. Why do you think they're going to send you to jail? Well, she then begins to tell me a story. She says, Derrick, When I was 7 years old, I overheard my dad receive a phone call from a store owner. He had just bought school supplies and school clothes for she and her sister,
Mm-hmm.
and her dad had accidentally bounced a check. And
Mm-hmm.
the store owner said to her dad, I know you did this on purpose. I'm going to send the
Mm.
cops over there and have you sent to jail.
Oh my
So the
goodness.
7-year-old girl, she's now like 55 years old,
Wow.
grew up believing that you bounce a check, you go to jail.
Oh my
Now, between you
goodness.
and me and most of our listeners, that sounds crazy. Like, what? How could people think like this? But when you have money beliefs that are
Mm-hmm.
put in your mind so early, you simply begin to believe them because they're from parents, well-meaning grandparents, relatives, etc. So I said, I tell you what we'll do. I will call you first thing Monday and I'll help you move the money from savings to checking. We'll get that covered. No need to get fitted for the orange jumpsuit. You are not going to jail
Right.
this weekend, okay? But I
Yep.
said, more importantly, come in next week. Let's schedule a visit together and let's
Mm-hmm.
unpack what is happening here. So she
Mm-hmm.
comes in the following Wednesday and she begins to tell me about these money beliefs. And even as she's saying them out loud, she's like, Derrick, I can't believe I actually believe this because
Mm.
there were a couple problems she had. First of all, I would give her really good advice, money
Yeah.
making advice that helped make other people money, but she wouldn't take it. And she realized she was risk averse. She was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
if I make a mistake, that confirms I'm not good with money.
Yeah.
And then she was always complaining about not getting the raise or the promotion she deserved. Shockingly, after we visited, we unpacked all this. She left. She looked about 5 years younger, like the weight of the world left her shoulders.
Uh-huh.
Within 3 months, Austin, she got a $25,000 a year raise and got promoted to vice president.
That's
And she
awesome.
had the skills there. They were all there, but she didn't believe in herself enough. Her beliefs were holding her back. And so I would ask people watching and listening right now, be honest with yourself. If you're not getting paid what you know you're worth, and if your money is not making the money you know it should be, what bad money belief do you have that you need to shed so that the future can be much better than your past?
Absolutely, man. That's an incredible story. We could talk about that one story, I think, all day long because there's so many things that fall into that, and I'm reminded of all the things that we learn whenever we're growing up, good or bad. We don't realize until we become an adult, and sometimes even then don't realize how we were educated and impacted and influenced by our younger years.
That's right.
And I've shared this with other people on the other podcasts that I think not only is it important for us in our adult lifetime to learn how to manage money correctly, especially if we haven't been taught that before, but then to be sure that we are teaching our kids the correct ways and passing along the influence to them and changing that generation and not repeating the same mistakes that we experienced as a kid growing up. I think it's a twofold responsibility that we have. And sometimes we get so focused on, taking care of ourselves and trying to understand, how we messed up or how our parents messed us up and kind of shouldering almost that personal sentiment of what needs to change in our life. But then it's also an opportunity to change that for our future generation and our kids and everything. And I always want folks that are parents to just hang on to that because it's not just about you, it's also about your kids and about the future generations that you're going to impact as well.
So true. I used to think that I had to be the perfect parent to teach my kids the perfect lessons.
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you a quick story. So this was back during COVID, and we have 4 kids. They were all home. We would have dinner around the dinner table. It was like we were living back in the 1800s again, for goodness sakes. And we would go around the table and do what we called highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
High of the day, low of the day. A lot of families do this. And I realized that my stories were pretty boring. Well, earlier that week, I had made about a $5,000 investment, just took a risk on something that I knew I could lose the money on and lost half of the money. And I said, you know what? I'm going to share this during my low to just see how the kids respond. So it came my turn around the table. Well, Dad, I said, well, here's my high today. I called a certain number of people, did this, but my low, I said, guys, you're not going to believe this, but I lost almost $5,000 today. What? Well, you could have heard a pin drop. I was like, wait a minute. So my kids don't listen to me when I'm talking normally, but when I talk
Yeah.
about a dumb mistake I've made, now my kids are like, "This is going to be the best ever. We got to listen to this. Dad really screwed up." And what it taught me was more is caught than taught.
Yes.
That oftentimes the best lessons are not lectures, but the mistakes that we made. And it was like the pressure left my shoulders that day. And what
Hmm.
I began to do is I always wanted to give my kids kind of this advantage of, hey, dad's been successful in business. Let me give you the inside tips and
Yeah.
the wisdom and help you save the time and mistakes a lot of people make. And my kids would be like, not interested. No, thanks,
Hmm.
dad. But when I began to share with them and lead with, hey, can I share with you a big mistake I made today? They were always like, yeah, dad, tell me. They
Right.
love when mom or dad screw up. But what it taught me was that ultimately they're going to make those same mistakes. And
Hmm.
if we don't talk to our kids about them when it happens to them, they're going to think something's wrong with them. And
Hmm.
that's a problem. So instead, by normalizing making mistakes as part of making money, it gives them the freedom to know that, oh, making mistakes is part of the journey of making money. And what I now believe, all four of our kids are now entrepreneurs, they all have their own businesses, is because they saw that modeled at home and they know
Hmm.
now that, hey, the ups and downs are part of what makes the entrepreneurial journey what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't even really echo that much more because it's so true that every day of our life is a lesson, and the more that we can experience that, whether it's parents or ourselves, I think we learn so much more by experiences and by learning from others' mistakes, and that's honestly that's a part of the reason why my co-host and I have this show is because we know that you can hear all the right stuff, all of these tactics and the strategies, but it really doesn't set in until you hear how we learned from our mistakes and what can happen when you do something the wrong way and how you can, be impacted by a wrong decision or by a negative mindset. There's always, I guess it's bad news or bad information sells. It's just that concept that if there's something wrong, we want to hear about it versus something right. Well, that's great and wonderful, but we don't really hang on to that as much as conflict and failure and mistakes that just really sticks out to us. And I think that's something that we can always put to good use, like you said, in how do we learn from our mistakes, how do we make this a lesson, and most importantly, how do we grow other people through that. I think that is so powerful.
And it's also funny how when you think about when you share a mistake you've made, it lets you be a better financial manager yourself.
Right.
Part of this process is so many parents, they say to me, Derrick, I want to teach my kids to be financially successful. But then they look in their own mirror and they say, well, what can I teach them? I
Yeah.
haven't been
Yeah.
successful. And what I tell them is, you don't have to be the expert to be the best teacher. You just have to
Hmm.
say, you know what? I believe in you and I see qualities in you that make me believe you're going to be very, very successful in business and in managing money.
Hmm.
Let me walk alongside you to help you grow this business. So you can be their greatest ally and encourager to get them on watching YouTube or buy them a course or get them
Hmm.
involved and engaged. You could be the worst financial disaster ever living, but if you give them the ability and the tools,
Hmm.
they can literally change your family's generation. So don't let your mistakes hold back the possible future success of your family.
Yes, yes, yes. Very well said. I think that's kind of a perfect merge into something I want to focus on for part of this conversation. We talked about before we jumped on the recording. There's a lot of bad beliefs around money. There's a lot of limiting beliefs around money, a lot of mindset limitations that we experience. As I shared with you before the call, our very first episode this season, we started unpacking what some of the most common ones are. I think that there's probably dozens of them out there. Every single person has a internal belief that is causing them to not achieve the full level of success. Some of them, the beliefs are stronger than others. But I would love to hear your insight and your experience around this topic and this whole thought process of bad beliefs around money, how they impact us, what they are, what we can do to overcome them. I think that we could really benefit from addressing those in the open and being cognizant of what are our struggles and how do we fix those. So I'll give you some time to kind of dive into that a little bit.
Well, one of the things that is my book is based on is, how to make more money to do more good. And one of the things we learn is that if you want to make more money, then you've got to believe in yourself and your ability that you can make more money. You've got to be able to follow a game plan to do that. And so a couple of things I write about in the book, and by the way, all of these come out of actual real life conversations with clients, things that I saw them experience, help them walk through, and basically help them solve the problem so that they could transform from that. And it's a powerful, powerful story. But two big ones that we find were very, very common. Number one is oftentimes it's a well-meaning parent or grandparent that does this. And so there was a couple that came into my office and they were frustrated. They said, Derrick, our friends are making more money. They've got a bigger house, bigger car, more money in their retirement accounts. What is wrong with us? Because on the outside, they looked successful, but on the inside, they knew they were better than what their current situation was. And so I said, as crazy as it sounded, I said, let's go back to your childhood. Tell me about some of your earliest memories talking about money. Well, what they said was so insightful. The man said, I remember as a kid, my father telling me that, son, in life, there's the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately, our family, we're the have-nots. We always just seem to struggle when other people don't have to. And so that young man grew up into an adult believing that, well, we're part of the have-not family, so just accept the struggle. That's just how it goes. But the wife was not part of that. She did not grow up in that environment. So she was always in conflict with her husband about money, like, why can't we do better? And once he said those words, and once she heard him say those words, it was like this financial reconciliation occurred. And we both could say to him, no, that is not true. That was your dad wanting to try to protect you from harm, but in actuality, he caused you harm that had cost you the life you want. And so he then realized, wait a minute, there's no longer the haves and the have-nots. It's what I choose to have or have not in terms of my activity toward success. Now, another story I'll tell you, we had another couple come in the office, and this couple also was struggling with money, a lot of conflict that would occur. They just felt stuck in the middle class. They knew they wanted to have more money. They knew they were capable to do it. But one of the things that the wife talked about is her grandfather talked to her and said, look, just so you know, you're probably only ever going to make this amount of money in the course of the year. Probably $75,000 is going to be the cap that most anybody makes. If you make more than that, you're probably doing something illegal or you're ripping people off. 75,000 is the cap. And so out of curiosity, I said, what is your current salary? I'm at about 74,000 and have been stuck there for like 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
And when she said that, all of our eyes got as big as saucers.
Yeah.
And she began to realize, oh my gosh, she had let this sort of internal money thermostat set the limit of how much money she could make. And by just talking through this and realizing so many people have put their ideas and their limitations on us, not in a way to harm us, but to try to protect us from disappointment. You see, her grandfather didn't want her to be disappointed if she didn't make more money. And so that was the limit that was put probably by his grandfather on him, and it just passed down through the generations. So the bottom line is, now I tell people, look, just write down any holdbacks that you have with your money. And the two ways to look at this are, if you feel like you're better than what your current paycheck says, you probably have a bad money belief. If you look at your net worth, you look at your house, your car, your investment accounts, the quality of your relationships around you, and they're not where you want them to be, you probably have not just a bad money belief, but even just a bad personal belief about yourself. And the good thing is, I think God gave us a big reset button we can press on the daily to reset that, because we can let our past be in the past.
Yeah, that is so well said. And it goes right along with what we talked about a few weeks ago, that so many of our limiting beliefs start from early on in our life. what we're taught, what we pick up, what other people that love us and
Yeah.
want the very best for us, and what they communicate to us may not be what's best for us. And I think that is where so many things begin. And then we get up to be an adult, and we begin to have our own life, our own experiences, our own beliefs and mindsets, and hopefully doors are opened to where we can learn that this is a limiting belief, this is a bad belief, this is something that is holding you back. And then you have the opportunity to overcome that, to attain a higher level of success, to reach bigger goals. It's almost like the opportunity just springs open once you realize this is not true for me. This is not my identity. This is not what I'm going to believe and be held captive to. What would you say to someone who, because I hear so many times people say either I don't make enough to get ahead or I'm not good with money. And I don't feel like either one of those two are so much what we learned from early on, but the way that we are seeing money managed and the way that we are exposed to it causes us to build these behaviors and these habits that make us then believe about ourselves those things. Have you experienced those similar beliefs, and how have you helped people kind of walk through those or overcome those?
Well, they're very real. I mean, what you described are real frustrations, real fears, real worry, and people begin to doubt themselves and their ability to make money and get paid what they know they're worth. It's not about deserve. It's about when you're working hard and you know you're worth this amount and you're not getting it, that is frustrating. And it really causes people to second guess themselves. So in our 5-step Millionaire Money Map framework, step number 1 is set 3 personal and financial goals. And the purpose of that is that this is like when I was a kid, we had these books called Choose Your Own Adventure. And these were cool because at the end of each chapter, you got to pick where you wanted to go next. Most books, you read one chapter, goes to the next one. Well, this might be, if the invaders are storming the castle at the end of the chapter, do you rescue the king and do this? Do you rescue the queen? And you get to kind of pick what you want to do. And so as adults now, financially, we want you to be able to choose your own adventure too. And the way to do that is with your goals. Nobody else's goals are your goals. But in the absence of your goals, life has its own set of goals for you as a default. And typically, they're not what you want. So you've got to fight back on a regular basis. So when you identify your 3 personal goals and 3 financial goals, what it is that you want, now you've got a clear direction as to what you're working hard for. But then step 2 is really the key. Earn the money that you know you're worth. So let's say right now that a couple watching, they're making $100,000 a year, but they feel like they're falling behind. And this was actually a real situation. We had a couple come in the office making $100,000. They felt like, Derrick, people say this is good money and we feel like it's good money, but why are we falling further behind? Well, what happened was they were told live within their budget, cut back on eating out, make all your coffee at home, live on rice and beans, all the things that people are told today, but it's really their parents' playbook that no longer works. Okay. Yeah. So we want to crumple that out and throw it out the window. What I tell people is, how much money do you want to make? And they look at me bewildered like, what? I said, well, how much money do you want to make? Well, I want to make $150,000. Okay. What do you mean? Okay. Well, the key is to determine how much money you want to make. And then once you have that decision made, then it becomes just a math problem of how do we find the $50,000? Well, suddenly now people are working in problem-solving mode of how do I get this? Not only do they not believe they can do it, now it's just a game plan. And so one of the things that we've done, and it's a resource, and it's called gettheRaiseYouWant.com, gettheRaiseYouWant.com. It's a download where we have people ask themselves 3 questions. In your current job, how can you help the company make more money? How can you help the company save more money? And how can you help the company be more productive? You see, if you're not actually helping the company make more money, save money, be more productive, then all you're going to get is that typical 3% highly frustrating, make me complain, can't wait till 5 o'clock on Friday raise. Yeah. And that's what nobody wants, okay?
It doesn't even cover the cost of inflation.
That's right. Frustration and broken dreams right there. Like we could call that the Netflix episode right there, settling for the 3% raise. So instead of that, when you can identify those tangible ways that you can help the company make money, save money, be more productive, you can now go to your boss and say, look, I don't want the 3% raise. I want a significant raise, but I want to prove that these things that I'm suggesting work. So in 60 days from now, I want to pre-negotiate a salary increase based on the outcome of these things. And what that does is it causes you to work more closely with your boss, which is always good. Even if you don't get exactly the results, you're probably going to get much more than a 3% raise. The key is I want people working hard, knowing that they're getting paid what they're worth. That's the key. And then you got to ask yourself, in my current job, can I actually get a raise? If you're a teacher, a pilot, a nurse, you might be the best teacher in your local area, but you are not going to get a raise unless every other teacher gets a raise.
Right.
It's just how it works. I mean, life is hard. So you have to choose, do I want to stay a teacher or do I want to change jobs and get paid more? Or do you launch this side hustle? And we give some simple ways to launch a side hustle, doing what people already ask you to do or they pay you to do without having to go back to school and get some advanced degree. But the key is, once you determine how much money you want to make, it's just a math problem of how to get there.
It's such an interesting concept that I feel like we don't. The phrase I've always used is we never give ourselves, how do we put it? We give ourselves too much grace and not enough credit.
Yes.
For what we can accomplish in a year's time.
That's true.
And I think the exact same is said about what you are worth and what your potential is. And I know I'm sitting here going, I've been in this spot. I have not made as much as I want to make, in a year's time. And I know that I have had things that are holding me back from doing that. We let ourselves become subject to our environment and to our situation, and we don't take control of what we can control. And I think that plays into this so much because you are worth as much as someone is willing to pay you.
Right.
And that is based upon how much value can you add, how confident are you in yourself, how much impact do you create. I've always heard the phrase that money is a receipt for the value that you paid someone else. And whenever you can increase that amount of value, the amount of money that you can make, honestly, is endless. It really is. I mean, there is no cap once you can just continue to add the value that you provide to someone. So I think, if you really want to achieve maximum financial success and freedom, you maximize the amount of value you can provide, and you maximize the amount of control that you maintain over the money that you get. And you take hold of both of those, because if you can increase your income and maybe not reduce your expenses, but control and monitor and manage your budget and your expenses and what you're spending your money on, then you are in full control of your financial capability. And you're exactly right. We put so much emphasis on cutting back, reducing, limiting. There is a time and a place for that, by all means. There is a time and a place to be more conscientious and more aware and not be, loose and free whenever we need to be a good manager and a good steward of what we have. But that isn't the end all answer, right? That's a component. But if you want to go above and beyond that, by all means, go out and make more money, add more value, change someone else's life, and your life will be changed as a result of that, I believe.
So true. And what I would say is some people listening right now think, well, Derrick, that sounds so easy. I mean, you were a financial advisor, you can do that. But what I'm talking about is I became a millionaire when I was 37. Mm-hmm. And I became a millionaire when I was 37 by helping a lot of other people become millionaires. So one of the best ways to make more money is to do three things: help other people make more money, help other people save more money, help them be more productive and have a better life. Mm-hmm. When you do one of those three things, people will pay you because it helps improve their life. And so that's the basic model of making more money. But what I would tell you is, and this goes back to when I was a kid. So my mom and dad, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. I grew up very, very kind of lower middle class. But there was a place called Chuck E. Cheese, which I still love to go to even as an adult. And what Chuck E. Cheese would do is when you brought in your report card, if you made an A, you got 3 tokens. If you made a B, you got 2 tokens. And so part of my internal incentive as a kid was I want to get free Chuck E. Cheese tokens. And so I would try to get as good grades as possible. But what that taught me was even as adults, we still love incentives. And so step 5 of the Millionaire Money Map is to track your progress and build in incentives that keep you motivated. For example, anytime you do something hard, if there's no motivation to do it, it makes it even harder. If I'm going to cut back on something that I enjoy, there needs to be some kind of a dessert or a carrot 30 days later to know here's my reward. And so what I tell people is, let's say that you've got, a loan you want to pay off. And you said, I'm going to pay half of this off in the next 6 months. Well, in 3 months, treat yourself based on your progress to stay motivated. In 6 months, really celebrate. So you might take a little bit of a step back to take on an expense, but it's worth it to keep you motivated to stay focused on the goals. And also it's important to have what I like to call an accountability partner. If you're married, it can be your spouse, if not a good friend. And you then walk through your money life together. And what we find is nobody ever wants to tell their friend or their spouse, yeah, I didn't do what I said I was going to do.
Right.
They will stay up all night to try to figure out a way to solve this thing. And they should have worked on it 2 months earlier because they don't want to embarrass themselves. And so that accountability, all of these little hacks are what successful people find to get them to the next level. Most millionaires will tell you, look, this wasn't easy. And most of them are first generation millionaires. Their parents weren't millionaires, but they just said, I don't want my life like it is anymore. Enough is enough. It doesn't have to be this way, and I'm going to change it.
Absolutely. And I've said all along, ever since I started coaching, that the key to achieving financial success is not about how much money you make. It's not about how much money you spend. It's what you do with what you have, and the behavior management that you implement to be a good steward, to be a good manager, to achieve your goals. You are the one in control of the outcome. You are the one in control of the decisions, the actions, the reactions. We obviously all want to make more and spend less. That's just a common goal amongst anyone in America today, to increase our income, to reduce our expenses, to have more money in our pockets to take home. And that all goes back to those decisions and those behaviors. And I don't think that enough can be said about the motivation that people have to have. It cannot be just something that you want because it is a good idea, or you want because your friends have it, or you want because you're trying to, you don't want something else, so you want this instead. That's never going to be enough motivation to push you through those difficult times and the slow process that it can sometimes be, and all those different challenges. If you're not fired up by a strong internal desire to either not mess this up, or achieve a level of success that you just earnestly want for yourself, you're probably going to never get there, because you will continually stop, or you'll not hit that mark. You will not keep yourself accountable. That internal fire, in my opinion, is what sets apart the folks who win, the folks that don't. They act. They are driven. They are intentional. They are purposeful. And if you don't take action and take responsibility and take accountability, you have no one else to blame but yourself, in my opinion.
Well, and I would echo that. And, action leads to satisfaction. Unless you act, you are not going to achieve the life you want. And one thing I think we want to make sure that people understand is, when you're doom scrolling on social media, it can look like, oh my gosh, everybody else knows the secrets that I don't. How are these 20-year-olds multi-mega millionaires and they've got their Lambos? Well, because they're rented and they just needed to produce content for the fake course they're selling. That's why. And so there's not a lot of people out there that are actually walking the talk. So it's important to realize that we're all in the same struggle. When I'm on stages speaking, there's an analogy that I give, and typically I'll bring my roller bag suitcase on the stage, and I'll say there's one thing that everyone in the world has in common. We're all carrying a roller bag of luggage. And when we're younger, that roller bag is light and it's filled with our hopes and our goals and our dreams. But as we get older, it gets heavier, and it gets filled with our problems and our pain, our worries and our fears. And inside all of us, we desperately long to have someone to make our luggage lighter. We want someone in our life to understand our pain and to help solve our problems. What I would tell people today is my attempt in writing this book and creating the Millionaire Money Map is to not just limit this knowledge to the select few. We want to make it available for everyone. And I want to be your luggage lightener to help you achieve the goals that you want. All of us have made mistakes. There's regrets. There's things that I've got in my life, but now I like to call myself an anti-regret specialist. Wherever you're at right now, do not die before you're dead.
Yeah.
Your past, be in the past, and all you have is your next best move. And I want that to be the one you'll be proud of when you lay your head on the pillow tonight.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth said about that. I think so many people, they don't seek help because they already have regret. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to face it. They just want to live with it.
Yeah.
And there is such a downward cycle to that. You will be a better person if you, I don't want to say accept the failure, but if you just own the fact that you made a mistake and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You can always change. You can always do something different, but only if you find someone who can help you with that. You probably are not going to do that on your own. But that, I love that anti-regret. I think that's something that we can all hang on to, and not let our past mistakes dictate and define what our future self is capable of. I think that's the biggest thing that we can all take away from this conversation. You know, your past does not define what your future will provide and what will bring to you. I think that is a belief that everyone needs to embody.
Well, and if you feel stuck right now and you say to yourself, enough's enough, then what will you do about it? In other words, what most people will do is 6 months from now, they'll be in the exact same spot, same worries, same fears, same complaints. So the reality is if you have a sucky life right now, it's going to be even suckier 6 months from now unless you choose to do something courageous and bold. And I just believe I like money. I like working with money, investing it. And when you're making more money and you're getting paid what you know you're worth, it gives you a feeling of self-confidence that gives you courage to take the risks you need to make smarter money decisions. We find when people are working themselves out of being stuck, their financial lives improve, their relationships improve, how they feel about themselves improve, their relationships with their kids improve. There's a whole lot of things that occur when you set goals. And I would encourage people, the one takeaway, set 3 personal, 3 financial goals, and suddenly now you're in control. When you set a goal, you are in control. You get to choose what your own adventure looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Love that. Well, man, I think we have had a lot of great wisdom shared through this and a lot of wonderful stories. I've been inspired myself, so I know the people listening will be as well. So as we kind of wrap up today's conversation, I'd love to give you a few minutes just to share what opportunities you have for people to follow you and to work with you, and how they can find more resources from you. What is Derrick Kinney doing to help folks these days?
Well, Austin, first of all, thanks for having me. You're such a great host. I've heard about you, and to be on your show was a real honor. So thank you for that. Our website is derrickkinney.com. We've got several free resources, and one is you can also go to gettheraiseyouwant.com. Definitely download that. But also you can follow us on Instagram at Derrick Kinney. We post daily tips, practical, proven tips to help you make and save more money. Also, if you want to follow us on LinkedIn as well. But what we offer is coaching for people, and we do a lot of speaking around the country. What I believe is so many people feel stuck and trapped because they're following their parents' financial plan. And we basically like to say we don't want to follow the old rules, we rewrite the rules. And it's time that you rewrite your financial rules.
That's awesome. There's so much opportunity available whenever you take control of the ship and do exactly that. Awesome. Well, Derrick, thank you so much for sharing, for being a part of this show. Loved having you. Love the insight and the wisdom and the encouragement that you share. And we'll definitely drop those links in the show notes. And yeah, definitely have you back sometimes. We could talk a lot more about all of these points. And there's so much goodness and gold here that's very beneficial to all of us. So appreciate you taking time to share today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Austin.